Like thinking about that, I'm just like tearing up now because I'm just like, oh my gosh, like it finally was our turn. It finally happened for us. We finally got our baby and she was healthy. Hey guys, it is officially January 2022, so happy new year to everyone. I hope that you all had a wonderful new year, and will have a wonderful new year. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. But I'm so excited. If you can't tell, I've had the baby, and I'm sure by now, I've posted something letting you know that I've had the baby already. So she was born December 7th, and in today's video, I just want to kind of go over our birth story. It was kind of a little traumatic, and just, it was a lot for me because I went in thinking I was having something done, but then I ended up not. It was just, yeah. So unfortunately, everything kind of moved. Once we got in the room and kind of settled, things started kind of going kind of fast. So I don't have a lot of video. I don't have a lot of, actually I don't have a lot of recording. I have one quick minute video that I'll probably insert here so that you guys can just see. But yeah, it was a lot. Got to be over there. Must be nice to relax. We finally made it back to our room and spent hours in triage since like 6:30 this morning. So we finally made it back to our room. And they've given me, what is it called? Cytotec to induce or jumpstart my labor, even though I'm already having contractions. Get my honey. That's your daddy there, little baby. But anyway, let's see what else happened. That's it, right? Yeah. I just had my Cytotec given, and that's all. So I didn't get a chance to record, but I wanted to just kind of go over my birth story and just kind of share like what all exactly happened. One, for my benefit, and then of course, obviously, maybe someone out there can relate to what happened with me. I don't know. But so I want to say the last video that I posted was basically me saying about how I was going to have to have a C-section because I had gone, I think I was like 38 weeks and the baby was still breech. And so when I went to the doctor, of course, then you guys can obviously go look at that video, and I share about how he said, oh, let's have a baby. So he said Monday, December 6th. So here's what happened. I walk in there Monday, December 6th at 6. We were there probably about 6:30-ish because we had to be there at 6:55. And we were scheduled for our surgery at 8:55. So I get there and I actually see my doctor, and he's like, hey, what are you doing here? Because keep in mind, the doctor that I saw a week ago, he was not my regular doctor. My doctor was unfortunately out of town, and so I had to see him. So anyway, so I see my doctor there, and he's like, what are you doing here? And I tell him like, hey, I'm having a C-section. What are you doing here? And he said, I'm doing a C-section. So he's like, hey, I can do your C-section, which instantly put me at a sigh of relief because I'm like, hey, you know what? He's done my D&C a couple of years ago. He's obviously been my doctor for the past 3 years, so obviously I'm comfortable with him. So I'm like, oh my gosh, that would make me feel so much better, you know. And so we signed the paperwork, did everything, and I'm in triage at this point, and they are telling us like, oh, the rooms are super packed. There's not a lot of space or anything. So I'm like, that's fine, you know, we can just sit back here for a little bit. Mind you, I was already starting to have contractions. I actually started them that morning, and I knew, like, I wasn't 100% sure because I'm like, she's breached, like, I'm probably like not gonna experience contractions. Okay, so I'm like having cramps, and then they would go away. So I'm like, okay. So anyway, to make a long story short, when we get back to triage and they hook me up to everything, and I'm like, hey, am I having contractions? And they're like, yeah, you sure are. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, because in my mind, I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to experience anything, any contractions, any this, any that, because I'm having a C-section. So back to triage, basically. So they are like, hey, we're gonna get ready to start prepping you for your C-section. But before we do that, let's do one last ultrasound just to make sure baby has not flipped. Lo and behold, guess what she did? She flipped. And so they're like, oh my gosh, she's head down. Let's talk to the doctor. So of course my doctor's like, oh, well, let's have this baby today. Let's get her induced. Let's do it. So I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. So they were talking about giving me medication to induce me and everything. Unfortunately, since we were in triage, we could not start the inducing medication, which in hindsight, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God, because we were in triage from, like I said, probably about 6:30, 6:40 or something like that, all the way up until 8 that night. 8:30 that night, because the hospital here, they just did not have any rooms available, I guess. And so it wasn't bad, but like triage, the rooms are like super tiny and it's tight and you're uncomfortable. The beds are uncomfortable. Like, it's not for more than a few hours, basically. Like, it was awful in there. So from being there over basically like 8 hours, from 6 something all the way till 8 something, like, it was way too much. So anyways, we get back into the room. Very nice, big, spacious room. Wonderful. So they started me just about right away, like, obviously changed my clothes, got into the gown, all that stuff, got me situated, set up. And they started me right on Cytotec, which was, it wasn't Pitocin, thank God, but it was the pill that I would put, I think was it my cheek or under my tongue? I can't remember, but I did that. So I put it in my, mouth. And a few hours later, like, and I think you had to do it like every 4 hours, something like that. My memory is, that's why I wish I would have like recorded, but I didn't, so I'm going off my memory. Anyway, so they gave that to me every 4 or so hours or so. And when I say the contractions were hitting, I felt like all of that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck did I ask for? And the crazy part about it is them checking me. Y'all, no one wanted to warn me about them with those cervical checks. My goodness, they were awful. Part of it is probably because how my body is, and my cervix is apparently posterior, which makes it even harder for them to basically feel. And so it was awful. Those checks were awful. And I had 2 nurses that could not get it, and then the last one, she was like, we are determined to get this so we can see how far along you are. So she, of course, did what she had to do and checked me, and I had to kick her. But we found out the next morning or so that I was about 3 centimeters dilated, and the contractions were bad. The contractions were bad. Plus, with the cytotech, they also told me that baby was a little bit, I guess, like in distress a little bit, because her heart rate kept like going down and then up and then down, you know. So then they stopped the cytotech because of that. And so they're like, okay, no more cytotech. Let's just sit and let's see how far along you progress. So hours go past. I can't take the pain anymore. I can't. I'm like, I can't do it. So of course I opt in for the epidural, which honestly was not that bad. I thought it was going to be a lot worse than what it was, but it was not. Thank God. Like, I was already nervous, and the anesthesiologist, he made me feel so much better about everything, and so it was very like relaxing and just like, oh, okay. And so yeah, I basically don't even remember. Like, I don't even remember what that feels like or what it felt like. And so once I had the epidural, I guess because my body was just so relaxed, I went all the way up into an 8. Mind you, my water had not broke yet. And so let me see, one of the nurses, they checked, and she's like, oh my gosh, you're at an 8. Now she said, now obviously this is, you know, with your water bag, so the water bag is helping to obviously open me up. However, baby was still not like down where she needed to be. And so they're like, well, we're gonna break your water, and, you know, kind of go from there. So I'm like, okay, you know, we're gonna keep moving along. She said, don't be surprised though if once we break your water, you go back down to like a 6 or a 7 centimeters. I'm like, oh man, okay. So what happened, they broke my water, and of course, they're like, oh, she had her mech or something like that. I'm like, what the heck is mech? Well, basically, baby had her first bowel movement inside, and so they obviously got to see all that, which startled me and kind of scared me a little bit, because you hear so many like scary stories of that happening, and then that, you know, not so good things happen to babies and to the moms and all of that. So it was kind of scary. But they're like, it's fine, it happens, you know, it'll be okay. But once we break your water, we're not gonna be able to do so many checks, you know, cervically. So I'm like, that's fine with me. And so let's see, that was probably about 5 or 6, I think, 5 or 6 p.m. the next day, so the 7th, when they broke my water and everything. And after that, they let me go for a couple more hours, and they're like, okay, let's check you, let's see how far along you are. A couple more hours later, and I was still at a 6. And the baby's heart rate was kind of going a little bit crazy, because they also gave me, at that point, they had also started me on Pitocin as well. I forgot about that. And they're like, oh, you're having good contractions, really strong contractions, but baby's still not moving down where she needs to be. And then her heart rate is kind of, you know, fluctuating a little bit. So they're like, here's your options. We can let you labor on for 2 more hours, and just see kind of where we go from there, or, you know, you can have a C-section. So at this point, you know, I had to make the conscious decision. I was nervous. I was scared, because I'm like, my baby was like, had been inside. She no longer has the little barrier or the water bag to protect her from anything. And I knew, you know, because they had told me, like, once that water breaks, you know, you're prone to infections, especially if they're checking me often, which I felt like even though they had told me they weren't, I feel like they were. And so I said, you know what? Let's have a C-section. I can't, like, I'm done. I'm tired. At this point, I just want her out. I want her here. I want her safe. I want her healthy. I want her okay. And so they're like, oh, okay, well, let's get the head midwife. Let's talk to her. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but I'm telling you now, I want a C-section. And so of course I talk to her and I tell her, you know what, I'm done, I'm tired, I am worried about my baby, I want a C-section. So of course they're like, okay. So they were telling me like the doctor that was on call, he likes to do C-sections at 9 or something like that. So I'm like, 9 o'clock, cool. They can start prepping me and getting me ready. And so that's basically what happened. They started prepping me once 9 o'clock, a little after 9 hit. They started prepping me and getting me ready and things like that. And, you know, things moved rather quick. I shouldn't say right at 9 because she wasn't born for another hour. So I want to say probably around like, it didn't take them long. So like probably like 9:30 or so, they started prepping me and getting me ready. Maybe a little bit before 9:30. Which, you know, they didn't do any washing or anything. And of course put my hair up in a little hair thing, get my husband whatever he was gonna put on, and that was basically it. And will us off to the OR, and at 10:02 p.m. little Giana was born. She was born 8 pounds, 11 ounces of fun, and 20.89 inches. And being on that operating table, I'll tell you right now, being pumped with all those drugs, that medication, and not being able to see your baby and not being able to hear your baby cry was the most scariest and like traumatic thing for me in that situation, because you see movies, you see videos, you hear people, you hear their stories, and like, oh yeah, I had a C-section or vaginally or whatever, and my baby was crying. And my husband is over there like, just stay calm, you know, trying to keep me just, you know, because I'm like, what is going on? You know, I almost wanted to, like, if I could, I probably would have gotten that, but I wanted to get up because I'm like, what the heck? And then I start hearing this flatlining noise, and I'm like, you know, you start freaking out basically. And my husband's like, afterwards, he's telling me like, they're just trying to clean her up and to get all that meconium and things out of her system. And, you know, because she was just like, what? She was so alert. Her eyes were so open. She was just looking around like, where in the world am I? And so, but that feeling of like, I'm like, why isn't my baby crying? Like, what is wrong? You know what I mean? Like, what is going on? And so, like I said, she was born at 10:02. My husband got to obviously take her and, you know, be with her for a little bit. They had to sew me up, clearly. And I can remember them talking about me bleeding and hemorrhaging because of this fibroid, and they couldn't find this tool. And I was just like, oh my gosh, get me off of this operating table. And I was so out of it, but I was so afraid to just like relax and fall asleep. I just was like, no, I want to know where my baby is. I want to know where my husband is, like what is going on. And so about 10:45, they had finally finished. They cleaned me up, stitched me up on the way back to our room. Now I thought we would be going to a postpartum room. We ended up in a triage room, basically, because there were no rooms available. So the room was tiny and small, uncomfortable, but this is the hospital where I had to have my daughter because there are no other hospitals here. So that was fine, whatever. I got over that really quick. In fact, I didn't even realize it until the next day because I was so out of it and so with the medication that I was just like loopy. And to be honest, I had the shakes really bad. Like they probably were looking at me crazy because I'm just like, I can't hold her. I'm shaking. And they're like, you can hold her. And y'all, as soon as they put her on my chest, like it was like all the shaking stopped, everything just went out the window, and there was just a peace and a calm. And I was just so grateful to have her. Like I was in awe. Like I couldn't believe it. I'm just like, you came out of me. Like, you know, just overjoyed. And like thinking about that, I'm just like tearing up now because I'm just like, oh my gosh, like finally was our turn. It finally happened for us. We finally got our baby, and she was healthy and she was okay. She still hadn't cried yet, and I was like, oh my gosh, why not? But the next morning, she did cry, and I remember making a statement prior to her crying. I said to the nurse, I'm like, she's not crying, you know? And the nurse was like, oh, she will. And then, yeah, like 5 minutes later, she let out this huge cry. And she's like, oh, there's your cry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, wow, okay, yeah, that's a big cry. And unfortunately, I got to spend, she's born on Tuesday, December 7th. And we got to spend that night together. And after that, that was the only night that we got to spend while we were in the hospital. Wednesday, the pediatrician came to check her, and she was breathing, like, so her breathing was not, she was breathing, but it was very rapid. And you could really see her chest moving up and down. And so, of course, the pediatrician was concerned about that. And of course, with the blood work that they did, come to find out, I ended up having an IUI, yes, called an intrauterine infection from after they broke my water. And so I think a NICU nurse told me they used to call it an amniochole something. I can't remember the term, but basically got an infection from after they broke my water. And so obviously they were concerned that the baby too would have it. So she was in the NICU from Wednesday all the way till Saturday. So for me, it really sucked because I felt like, you know, they took that bond in a sense away from us. But I also knew that I wanted her healthy, and I knew that, you know, this was obviously something that we had to get done, you know, because I wanted her to be healthy. I also had to take antibiotics. She had to take antibiotics. It just, yeah, from Wednesday to Saturday, she was in the NICU. And while it was nice that I could go see her whenever I wanted, it's still not the same, you know. And then she was all connected to these cords, so even just like trying to hold her and nurse her, that was a hassle. But you know, she was released on Saturday, and all praises be to God. She is healthy, has been healthy. She's gained her birth weight back and then some, obviously. At this time that I'm recording, she is 3 weeks. She'll be 4 weeks on the 7th in just a few short days. So exactly 1 month, which is crazy to me that I have a 1-month-old. And it just brings tears to my eyes because, like I said, y'all, like, God is so good. I was not expecting this. But 2021 was so good to me in regards to having her. 2021 was so good to me in regards to starting my YouTube channel and just having these videos ready. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I just wanted to share, I guess, my little journey and my story. And who knows, you know, when that time comes again, I may want to share my next journey, you know. But in the meantime, we are enjoying every minute and every moment of this sweet, sweet, sweet little girl. And we are just so blessed. For those of you that are looking forward to 2022 being your year, for your babies, I am praying for you and with you, sending you lots of baby juice, baby dust, baby prayers, everything that I possibly can Claim it, manifest it, say it. Looking back on some of the videos that I said I was having a baby in December. I meant it with my heart, and God answered that and acknowledged that, and I had my baby in December. So anyway, I just, hope you guys enjoyed my little labor story. I'm sorry that I didn't get a lot of video of it, but it went by so fast. So sorry about that. But anyway, please comment, like, subscribe to the channel. I am trying to grow my subscribers. So, and let me know what kind of videos you guys would like to see in the future. Because it's a new year, baby girl is here. So let me know. I am praying for you all. I hope you all have a wonderful and a just blessed new year. And we'll see you in the next video.